Support for First Coast Connect is provided in part by Baptist Health and North Florida TPO.
Opinions expressed on the First Coast Connect Week in Review are those of our panelists and do not reflect the views of WJCT News 89.9.
Good morning. I'm Hethel Butt in for Ann Schindler. It's Friday, which means it's time for our First Coast Week in Review. Among our topics, Chief of Staff Susie Wiles decries a widely read Vanity Fair profile as a hit piece. Governor DeSantis pushes for rules on chatbots and data centers, even as the president works to snuff out state-level AI guardrails. The country's largest Muslim civil rights organization sues Florida's governor for declaring the group a foreign terrorist organization. A grim holiday tradition continues as law enforcement sees an uptick in domestic violence reports, and confusion reigns over a Florida law restricting the use of license plate frames. To talk about all of that and more, I'm joined by former political reporter and longtime political consultant John Daigle. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Sylvia Perry, editor of the Jacksonville Free Press. Welcome this morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
And Christina Burgess, reporter at First Coast News. Good morning.
Good morning.
We also have Jack Webb, attorney and former city council president, who is joining us by phone. Good morning, Jack.
Good morning. Sorry about the difficulty this morning. Thank you.
That's okay. So let's start with the headline from this week that snowballed into even more headlines. Susie Wiles' interview with Vanity Fair. Wiles is President Donald Trump's chief of staff. She began her career here in Jacksonville, served as chief of staff for Jacksonville Mayor John Delaney, also worked for John Payton and Lenny Curry as well. So many mayors here in the Jacksonville area. And she was even hired to lead Governor Ron DeSantis' campaign in 2018. She rarely gives interviews, and this was a two-part piece that included 11 interviews over nearly over a year of 11 interviews with the White House. So, John, what does this say exactly about President Trump?
Well, I think for me, like a lot of us around who've been around the First Coast for many years, who've known Susie, I think the bigger question is more of what it says about her. I mean, most of us who knew Susie, I worked with her very closely back in the 90s as a reporter for the Times-Union covering the Austin and Delaney administrations. I did campaign work with her in the 90s, and we actually taught a class together on running for office through Leadership Jacksonville. Knew her very well, very high opinion of her. But a lot of us who knew her back in the 90s have been watching her with the Trump administration, kind of scratching our head and going, doesn't seem like Susie we knew back in the 90s. And if you read that article, a lot of people have read social media posts or articles about the articles. But if you read that article closely, there's some things in there that are very telling. Some of the things that haven't gotten the headlines, the article talks a little about Susie's transition around 2015. And it's really, to me, representative of what the transition that the Republican Party in general went through. Susie went through some tough times around that time. She was very much of a traditional Reagan, Bush Republican when most of us knew her in the 90s. And then, she worked John Huntsman's campaign and lost pretty significantly in 12. And then she worked for Ron DeSantis and helped him get office, but kind of got the cold shoulder from the DeSantis administration after helping get him into office. And she also went through a pretty messy divorce with her husband, Lanny, who was also very much a traditional Republican. And it seemed a lot changed for her around 2015 when she came into the Trump camp. But in many ways, to me, Susie's transition, at least what we can see from a distance, represents a lot of what the Republican Party, how they transitioned during those years. They elected two very nice traditional Republicans in Mitt Romney and McCain before that. Both got beat significantly by Obama. The Tea Party kind of emerged after McCain's defeat, and then MAGA kind of came out after Romney's defeat. And the party, definitely changed a lot during that time. I mean, you saw the party kind of, after losing with two fairly nice traditional Republicans, they were very much looking for more of a street fighter in the time when Trump came in and really took power back in 2016. And I see a lot of, that same transition took place with Susie. So I found, again, if you can get past the headlines about the alcoholic personality and some of the things that have made news on social media and actually read the Vanity Fair articles, they're very fascinating, especially if you've been around here a while and kind of knew Susie back in the 90s.
And I wanted to bring Jack into the conversation as well. What did she say about the cabinet members, and what do you think that says about her loyalty to the Trump administration?
Well, John's points are really, really well taken, and it kind of sets up the big question of, okay, we understand you've been riding this tsunami of radical change within the Republican establishment for a long time. We get it. Okay, got that. And you are where you are. You've got this fascinating relationship with Donald Trump. I mean, that rivals Morgan Freeman and Jessica Tandy in Driving Miss Daisy. But honestly, it's just, why now? Let's face it. Susie Wiles, John, you know it. We all know that she is smart. She's deliberate. She's purposeful. What's the timing? There were 11 interviews here. I don't, the question is, why? Why? Where is this going? Is she seeing the end? Is she just stirring the pot with regards to the staff in an effort to kind of rejuggle or recalibrate the playing field going into the midterms? One thing about my understanding is that she has the loyalty of the president. She's not the president's. She doesn't run the president. She runs the staff. So she has the loyalty of the president. She has the loyalty, significantly, I believe, of the president's family. So why? That begs the question. Is it about Susie? Is it about Susie calculating her next move? I don't think so, because she's at the top. She's at the pinnacle of power right now. She's not looking for another job. Is she just is she anticipating a shakeup in the direction of the Republican Party to bring it home, as to John's points?
And John, did you want to respond to that?
Well, yeah, and I agree with Jack. And I think, one of the things that comes out of the article is Susie's probably biggest job in the White House right now, and things she's doing well, is letting Trump be Trump. It's what she's doing differently than some of the people around him during the first term. For better or worse, that seems to be her most valuable trait in the White House. She is, anybody who knows her knows she's extremely smart and doesn't make any mistakes. So I agree with Jack. There is a question of why now. You could read into it that, again, she sees the second half of his term being a rough term. She has to know that very few people survived long time in Trump's first term. So I don't know if she's sort of covering her base, knowing that, if history repeats itself, she's probably not going to make it all the way through his second term. I think anybody who works for Trump has to know that, after seeing the first term, has to know that they could be gone at any time. I agree that she doesn't do anything by accident.
Yeah.
And again, I think, when I read the social media posts about the articles, it came off a lot more harsh than if you actually read the article. You see, really, there's nothing, when you read the full article and get the context, there's nothing in there that shocked me. I mean, the fact that, J.D. Vance is a conspiracy theorist, I think he admits that finally. Most of the things that she said in there didn't shock anybody who's been following the current White House.
I think his response was, I only believe in the conspiracies that are true.
Yeah.
So, and in light of that, talk a little bit about President Trump's response to the article.
Well, Trump these days, as we saw, on Wednesday night, is seeming more and more unhinged, honestly. And again, Susie is letting him be who he is. I try to imagine, again, the Susie Wiles that I worked with covering the Delaney and Austin administrations, very controlled, but those were two people who knew how to stay on message. And obviously her boss now does not know how to stay on message. But I don't think that, I don't think anybody, Susie, even as good as she is, I don't think anybody can make Trump be something he's not. And again, what I see is she's going to have an increasingly tough time being a smart, reasonable, savvy person in a administration run by an increasingly unhinged boss.
Can you wanted to add to that?
Yes, I definitely think that America can find comfort in this article in saying that Trump is not just surrounded by a bunch of sycophants. There actually is a voice of reason, whether or not he listens to it or not. We know that there is somebody very close to him that does provide advice on some things that have been quite tumultuous to the country, such as the different the tariffs, etc. And she says her job is to fulfill his mission, not to guide him, but to see that it's done, whether she agrees with it or not. And we've seen in the past what happens when someone doesn't agree with him, whether it's through ideology or through action. It's the retribution, everything else. But she stays close. So clearly she's worth her weight in gold politically.
And some of the things that she pointed out that they had disagreements about were President Trump's policy on deportations, also his decision to pardon the January 6th rioters, and also some of the tariffs, as you mentioned. Jack, you wanted to add to the conversation as well?
Yeah, one thing going back to the political bent of all of this is, and again, it goes back to what John was saying before, let's face it, Susie Wiles knows politics as better than anybody in the world, I can imagine. But she knows that once the midterms hit, it's really the Trump administration is, for all intents and purposes, he's not running for re-election. As she said in the article, he's not running, but he's not running for a third term, but he's having a lot of fun talking about it. But that said, I will leave you with this thought. The one person that was spared in that article was who? It was Marco Rubio. What does that tell you?
So do you think she may have political aspirations to join him?
Well, let's think about it. Marco represents a demographic, a very unique demographic that's coveted by both political parties, especially the Republicans. As the MAGA base kind of, I don't want to say falls apart, but just ages out of relevance. Where does the Republican Party go? What's the next wave? Think about that for a second. But again, Marco's working 3 jobs as he proudly boasted during Labor Day. He's doing 3 jobs. He's keeping his nose to the grindstone, and he was not criticized or whatever. He wasn't even really mentioned in the Vanity Fair article. So I leave that for future speculation.
Yeah, and I think just on a final point, I think Jack's got a really interesting point. One of the things that I'm expecting to see after the midterms, and assuming the midterms don't go well for Trump's cabinet, which most people think they won't, I think you will begin to see camps within that administration. There's going to be a Rubio camp, and there's probably going to be a Vance camp. And Jax is right. If you try to read between the lines in that story, you do see kind of Susie foreshadowing where she's going to be if that kind of a division ends up being the highlight of the second half of his term.
And let me ask you, kind of going back, you worked directly with Susie Wiles. What was she like to work with? Oh,
as Jack and I both said, she's incredible. I mean, she's one of the most intuitive. She has, I tell you, one of the most powerful things I've ever seen in politics is a very smart, competent woman who allows people to take her for granted and uses that as a power. Because she's mild and soft-spoken, she has very little ego. She's always been able to use that to her advantage in an arena full of men, type A men with giant egos. And so that, and I've seen women, there have been a handful of women I've worked with in politics who know how to let people assume, underestimate her and then use that as her power.
We wanted to go to one of the callers on the line, Linda in Mandarin. Good morning, Linda.
Good morning. I understand many of you know Susie Wiles and are singing her praises, but I just want to put another counterpoint to that, a mirror up to it. She has a front row seat and an advisor to the president that's doing the most depraved, deranged things. Routinely, racist groups. She said that when Elon Musk was degrading USAID, she didn't see fit to tell the president to ask him to stop because he was too far along with it. So she may be a wonderful political operative, but she appears, in the reflection I see, is a depraved human being that is willing to sit with a front row seat. And in that article, she said she was there to facilitate the choices of the president. Can you be adjacent to a racist and not be a racist? That's my question to you guys. Thank you.
Thank you for the call, Linda. And Jack, I wanted to throw it to you. What is her responsibility in this role for being a check and balance for President Trump?
Well, I don't think she views that as her role. Linda's points are very, very well taken. I mean, you're not going to get an argument from me, but Linda correctly described Ms. Wiles as a political operative. That is, like it or hate it, love it or hate it. That's the way she views her job. Now, compare that to a Liz Cheney, okay? She sacrificed her political career because she did step up to Donald Trump. Okay, and I respect her for that. I truly do. I think maybe perhaps, Liz, that she has a role in the future of the Republican Party once our long national nightmare is over. But but that said, I think Susie views her role as being there to serve the president as the chief of staff. And she, I think she disagrees with him. Obviously, the Vanity Fair article did show that, did indicate that. And she is trying, I think she's probably exercising some effort, making some attempts to kind of rein him in and disagree with him, but realizing all the way that, Donald's going to be Donald. But, so I'm not saying I think Susie, to John's point, Susie Wiles, I mean, one of her greatest gifts is the fact that she's a very disarming personality. I mean, she'll remember a name. She's got a very soft touch. She is classic iron fist and a velvet glove. So.
Well, we want to go to another caller. Tom from the West Side is joining us. Tom, what did you have to add to the conversation? Good morning.
Good morning. I just want to say that, Ms. Wiles is just, frankly, enabling the destruction of our country and our federal government. And it's showing in the popularity polls that, people are not liking it. So I don't think either Vance or Rubio is going anywhere thanks to the taint that they have of associating with this administration. And, our country is going to be in a horrible shape when the next election rolls around. The defense diversions alone are weakening our country seriously.
Thank you for a call, Tom. What do you think about that? We did hear a lot of Republicans coming out against President Trump this week and some of his comments and actually saying, he's going too far. So do you think there's going to be a little bit of a split in the party?
And I think that is historically, if you've paid attention to politics, over decades, this is the time, most midterms don't go the way of the incumbent administration. I think there's a lot of people in Washington seeing that coming. And I think we've probably seen, again, if what we expect to happen, that the Democrats take back one or both of the chambers in the midterms, the second half of the term is going to be an increasingly unhinged Trump without much power to do anything other than sign executive orders and go on social media. So what you're seeing now is a lot of very, smart politicians, kind of seeing what's coming and starting to position themselves. You're seeing less and less loyalty to Trump all the time. And I think that trend continues over the next 2 or 3 years.
Christina, I wanted to ask you, obviously they could have chosen many different types of news publications to do this article. Why do you think Vanity Fair?
I'll say from the journalist side of it, I did listen in. The journalist that actually did the article has also been speaking, publicly, because I know the administration, I know the White House press secretary was, calling out some things, saying that there was some miscontext, but he was saying, as a journalist, your first big thing is that making sure your subject knows, you're being interviewed. This is on the record. And he even admitted that Ms. Wiles knew that through the 11 interviews that happened over the course of that year. Another thing that stood out to me that he said when speaking publicly was that, something a journalist loves, he was fact-checked. The president even said, I kind of maybe do have a personality that's like this. Like you even said to your point earlier, Vice President J.D. Vance also even said I'm a conspiracy theorist on some things. So, for a journalist to put out a piece like that, and for maybe there to be some critics that are saying, oh, things are out of context, but then in the same breath say, this is still true.
Yeah, you
So that
notice, and Christine's really right. You notice when the attacks came out on the article, when they realized how bad it was going to be, they called it a hit piece. They called it, but they didn't challenge anything in there. And now Chris Whipple, who wrote the article, is an amazing writer, and he was very smart. He has every one of those interviews recorded, and they knew that. So whereas normally you would hear the first reaction would be fake news, that you didn't hear that term. They knew that every one of those interviews was recorded, and they couldn't call it fake news, so they called it a hit job, but they didn't challenge a single thing in it because they knew that it was all on tape.
I agree.
Well, if you're just joining us, I am Hethel Pett in for Ann Schindler, and we're talking about the week's big headlines with our panel of media experts. You can join the conversation on air by calling 904-549-2937 or go to firstcoastconnect.org to find all the ways you can connect with us. So let's go ahead and move on to some of our other topics. There have been some disagreements over AI regulation between President Trump and Governor DeSantis here in Florida. Earlier this month, DeSantis announced a proposal to establish an artificial intelligence bill of rights for Florida residents. So Trump, in a way, responded with an executive order. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, John?
Yeah, and to me, again, tend to look at things through a political lens, and to me, the backstory here is what I find really interesting. If you look at the political landscape in Florida, you're seeing a huge shift. You look at both Miami and Jacksonville, both have recently elected Democrat mayors, and in the major metropolitan areas, Florida is turning bluer and bluer in the major areas and redder in the rural areas. And that you're seeing that shift as well in Tallahassee. And if you look at the focus of this upcoming session as well as the last session, you're seeing DeSantis focus a lot of attention on rural Florida, because I think that's where the future of the Republican base is going to be, and they know it. This AI thing is a very important issue for rural counties like St. Lucia that has got a proposal to build a gigantically expensive data center that's coming there. I think what you're seeing, again, from the political lens, is DeSantis. There are a lot of people in these rural areas like St. Lucia County that are expecting these giant multi-billion-dollar data centers coming to Florida. And that's going to change the power dynamic in those rural counties. And I think the Republicans, DeSantis and others, are very concerned about wanting to have some control over, it reminds me a lot of back in 93 when Jacksonville was talking about bringing the Jaguars here. And there was significant pushback among a lot of the Ortega, power brokers at that time, seeing that there were going to be, dozens and dozens of new millionaires coming into town that would dramatically change the political dynamics in this city. And Ortega very famously fought Jaguars coming here because that was one of the reasons, because of the power shift it would create. I see a lot of parallels now with some of the people who are anticipating huge power shifts happening in these rural counties as these very expensive data centers come in. It's also pretty interesting, again, trying to read between the lines. The news came out yesterday about Trump selling his company to this energy company, Fusion, whatever it was. That can't be coincidence that Trump is getting into that energy sector about the same time that he has got this really strong interest in AI. I have to believe that there's some kind of connection there.
And the opposition to the data centers that you're talking about has a lot to do with the use of water, and they're needing a lot of water to maintain those data centers, environmental issues.
Yeah, and they're buying up farmland and converting it to data centers. And again, bringing in a lot of new money into these counties that is going to be, brand new people who will be the wealthiest people. Like in St. Lucia County, where's the battleground for this current data center, it's going to be a very small number of people working there who are going to be very wealthy. And it stands to really change the power dynamics in that small rural county as well. And again, that's where I think Florida Republicans are looking at the future of their political base.
Jack, I wanted to throw it to you. DeSantis's response to the order seems to frame it as though the two policies are not in conflict with each other. Are they? And why would he go out of his way to kind of mention that they're not, even though in some ways they may seem that they are?
Well, I think that the two policies are in conflict. Obviously, you have the president issuing an executive order, saying, states can't do anything with regards to regulation of artificial intelligence, whatever. But last time I looked, the base or the justice or the basis, the legal basis for perhaps challenging state action on a particular issue would be a violation of the Commerce Clause, or a theory called the Dormant Commerce Clause, if a state regulation or statute discriminates against out-of-state residents or constitutes an undue burden on interstate commerce, and it's violative of congressional authority under the Constitution. Now, that said, that's not the president's job. The president doesn't. So this executive order, I don't think it's worth the paper it's written on. But DeSantis is correct in that this is not necessarily. This is not. It's an interesting first stab at the problem. What I find interesting is that it's a regulatory issue, and it's saying, listen, AI impact on insurance industries. Insurance regulation is clearly left to the states, so that's not going to be barred by the Commerce Clause. With regards to the impact on rural communities, John, you guys are absolutely right. By way of full disclaimer, my parents moved to Fort Pierce, Florida in 1978. So I'm actually a graduate of John Carroll High School in Fort Pierce, Florida. So I know the area very, very well. It traditionally was cattle and citrus. And that's what it was. And it's got beautiful beaches, but it's a sleepy little town. This is obviously DeSantis has got some political motivation here, but it's kind of funny too, because finally the Republicans in Tallahassee are saying, listen, we're going to, for at least in this particular issue, we're not going to take the power away from the county commissions as they want to do in other situations. We're saying we're going to empower the county commissions to block these types of these efforts because of the impact on the economy and the great sucking sound that's created by these with regards to energy consumption, with regards to these data centers.
Do you think the president is overstepping here in terms of, state rights versus?
Yeah, I mean, Jack's a lawyer, and I'm not, and yeah. I think Jack, he knows better than I do about the fact that it was like a lot of things. I think Jack's probably right that the president doesn't have the power to regulate AI in the states. And it's funny to me because, again, traditional Republicans have championed states' rights for so long, and we that seems to have gone by the wayside.
And we have to remember too that DeSantis is a sitting duck, so his challenges to anything and the jet speed on on executions and everything else is at his whim. He has nothing to lose.
And they did say that some of the protections, like child protections and things like that, would not be affected. But I think this is really about almost like preempting any kind of legal battle that could be brought for some of these AI policies. Do you think that if those are brought up, they would be held up in court? Jack?
I do. I do. I don't really, as I said before, I think the analysis is based upon Commerce Clause implications and the 10th Amendment. 10th Amendment, the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution are left to the states. This is not, again, it depends upon what the final legislation looks like or what any legislation enacted pursuant to its Bill of Rights or what the actual substantive provisions of all of this. But it could be piecemealed. But I think the governor, based on the federal constitutional issues, I think is pretty solid ground on this thing.
President Trump on Truth Social said there must be only one rule book if we're going to continue to lead in AI. And he said that won't last long if we're going to have 50 states, many of them bad actors involved in rules and the approval process. Doesn't this kind of go against Republican ideals of supporting state rights?
Of federalism, yeah. Can I speak to that real quick?
Sure.
Yeah, I kind of get that, but does that mean what? That means Congress. Congress can regulate it. Congress can regulate. They can do comprehensive AI regulation and whatever, and they can preempt the states from doing that. But Congress can't get out of its own way. So where does it go at that point? If Congress chooses not to act on this issue, then it goes back to the states.
Does it seem that the government is not keeping up with AI in terms of regulation?
Well, nobody's keeping up with
Yeah.
AI, but what I think it really foreshadows, I think the future AI is going to be a huge battleground. It's the next gold rush. It's the next, data and AI over the next 10 years is going to be, everything. And I think what we're seeing now is the very beginnings of huge battles that are ahead. You look at the people who have surrounded, Trump, the tech bros and the folks who have played a keen interest. And again, I think what we're seeing now is the very beginnings of what we'll probably witness over the next 10 years over battle over who really controls AI.
The companies are also trying to get ahead of it. I recall seeing a commercial just last night on Meta, speaking of going into Iowa and investing $600 billion into this tiny town, and it had the citizens talking about the difference that it makes. But in the case of the St. Lucie situation, they're saying they're going to invest billions of dollars, bring in 370 employees, making nearly six figures. But how will that affect, again, the rural community? Are they hiring them for the jobs? Are they going to be the ones making the 75 plus? But it'll be their homeowners' taxes, everything else going up. So I can understand where the governor's saying, trying to protect our citizens from supporting this, and yet try to protect the citizens as well.
If you'd like to comment on this week's news, we want to hear from you. Give us a call at 904-549-2937 or send an email to firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. Now, speaking of Governor DeSantis, we want to move to our next topic. The governor was sued over an executive order he issued last week. One of the country's largest Muslim civil rights and advocacy groups, the Council on American Islamic Relations, also known as CAIR, claims the governor's actions and designated the group a terrorist organization is unconstitutional. Sylvia, what does the governor's executive order mean for the group?
Well, they basically want to prohibit them financially from operating in the state of Florida, from getting funds. And this, of course, is mimicking what's happening in Texas, another Republican-oriented state where they basically did the same thing, and now they're trying to restrict their 501c3 status. So CAIR is fighting back. The Council on American Islamic Relations is the largest Muslim organization in the country. And they're saying that not only is this without due process, because only Congress can declare someone a terrorist, an organization a terrorist, but it's a violation of their due process, violation of their free speech. I mean, it's the same equation as you going against the National Baptist Coalition, just out of the blue and without any provocation. So,
but didn't we see something similar in terms of a movement to go against Muslim organizations after 9/11 and the fallout from that? And why are we seeing this played out again? Why are they specifically going after these groups when a lot of times they've been proven that there isn't specifically any threat from this group? Nothing happened that they specifically went after this group.
Well, according to the organization, this is stemming from the Hamas attacks on Israel. And we know that ever since that the Trump administration has been in office, those that have speaking out against or for the Palestinian situation have gone under attack. And again, our Republican administration is mirroring that as much as possible.
Jack, what do you think about the lawsuit against the governor, and do you think that they have a case?
I think they got a very strong case. It's been a bad week for executive orders, whether it's at the federal level by Donald Trump and AI, or with regards to Ron DeSantis. When this story broke, it was kind of interesting. When it did some research on it, found some attorney general's opinions from way back in the mid '80s, and basically said, because my first thought was, what's the basis for this? Does the Florida Constitution expressly provide that the governor has the authority to issue executive orders? And the answer is no. No, he doesn't. In certain circumstances, he does it under statute, but there's no inherent right or power of the governor to take such action. All right. So that said, what's interesting about the executive order as well, it just makes conclusory factual allegations as to Hamas, as to the Muslim Brotherhood, as to CARE's involvement, whatever, and it refers back to the Holy Land Foundation litigation some years back, and all of that. But there's really nothing. No, it goes back to the due process issue again. All right, you're basing this on what? And all right, so. And what is the purpose of this? I mean, so where's the due process? Where are the findings? And okay, so you're instructing FDLE and you're instructing the Florida Highway Patrol to enforce the law and investigate these people. Fine. You're the chief executive officer of the state of Florida. You can direct the cops to do what the investigating authorities to do what they want. But to issue an executive order that has punitive sanctions against an entity without due process, without any constitutional or statutory authority, is going to fail. And what I found interesting about the governor's comments is that when CARE came out, CARE says, "Hey, we're going to sue your butts." And I'm like, well, that's great, because once you sue us, we can answer and we can compel discovery, and we'll get all the documents necessary to prove our case against you. Well, go get the documents before you enact this executive order by fiat. So I think they've got a great case, and I think this is political posturing, and more to come.
Yeah, and just on the follow up on the tone of political posturing, again, at the risk of looking at everything a little bit too politically cynically, if you look at the timing of this, okay, Miami just elected a Democratic mayor first time in 30 years. A lot of the large Jewish population down there went Democrat for the first time in decades. There's a governor's election coming up in less than a year. You could, if you look at this from politically cynical, you could say that this is pandering to that Jewish population in Miami and trying to do whatever he can to shore up that population. He loves the fact that he's being sued by CARE because, it really helps him with that Jewish base in Miami, which is going to be critical in the next governor's race, in which there is going to be sort of a Trump versus DeSantis proctor or proxy battle going on for the next governor's seat.
That's an interesting take on that. Thank you guys for your input on that issue. And we wanted to move on to our next topic. Now, while the holidays can be a joyful time for friends and family to gather, it is also when there's an increase in domestic violence incidents. Christina, you've covered multiple cases, unfortunately, this week alone here on the First Coast. Tell us about a couple of them.
Yeah, so like you were just mentioning earlier, a lot of times, this is a time when people are home, we're coming together, we're celebrating the holidays. And sadly, sometimes that's when a lot of incidents tend to arise more for people who are in domestic relationships or situations. Just to hit on what happened this week, Wednesday morning, there was a woman who was in the hospital. She's in her 30s, and she was shot in the face by her boyfriend, who was in his 60s. According to police, they were saying that there was some altercation that happened in his apartment that led to her being shot in the face. She did have non-life-threatening injuries. And then I want to say a day prior, in a separate incident, there was another couple, another verbal altercation inside the home, and the woman's son shot the boyfriend, his mom's boyfriend, in the chest twice. And so these were back-to-back stories that we had covered that had happened, and it kind of brought about the topic on during the holiday season. When people are at home, we start to cover more and more of these stories. We cover them kind of year round, but we start to always see that increase when we are in the holiday season. So I spoke with a representative with the Hubbard House here in Jacksonville, and they provide services to people that are in situations like this and they need help. And they were telling me how many calls they receive over the years. And I know they receive so many when it, again, comes to like we're in this holiday time. And so I asked them, I said, why is this happening? Like, what's the reason? What do you guys think? And it's usually that financial stress. It's usually that emotional stress. You can't get enough money for the gifts. So now there's so much on you and you're getting frustrated. Or alcohol consumption. A lot of times when you get around the table with family and friends, you're drinking more. And that makes, some people tick or act out, and it's not okay. And so that was the big thing that they were saying to victims or people who are survivors that are listening, to know that they can get help, to call the Florida hotline, to call the Hubbard House, the Quigley House, if they find themselves in that situation where, a lot of times when you're not at work or you're home, you feel trapped, you feel isolated, you feel like you need to rely on that person that maybe is hurting you. But they're like, if you find yourself in something like this, ask for help, speak to a neighbor, speak to a family friend, and get the help that you need.
And if you or someone you know is experiencing domestic violence, you can contact Hubbard House's 24/7 hotline at 904-354-3114. You can also call the Florida Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-500-1119. Let me ask you this. For a lot of people who know someone who is going through this right now during the holiday season, in addition to, giving them the resources, what are things that they can do to support them?
The big thing I'll say is kind of watch your wording. I'll start with that one, because even when I was speaking with the Hubbard House, I was saying how a lot of times in comment sections, when you see something happen to someone, people will always say, well, why didn't they just leave? Why did they stay as long as they stayed? And sometimes I think you're not in their shoes. So I think the first thing is to kind of step outside of where you're at and realize that it may be hard for them. The second thing is just being there for them. Maybe if they're not able to leave at this exact time, always reassure them like, hey, I'm here for you whenever you need me. If you need me to get the kids, I can get the kids for you. If you need maybe some money to get you started, if you need to get to a new place, if you need me to take you to the shelter, just kind of being that check-in and resource that's there for them, because they may not be able to leave. Leaving is hard. But if they have just that lifeline and that support there, just being that for them, that's kind of the first thing.
A lot of times during the holidays, too, custody battles can also play a role in that as well. In terms of protecting children in these situations, is that something that Hubbard House helps with as well?
They do. Yeah, they do as well. I know they have some people there that can kind of help kind of be that resource and also give them the resources they need. They also have an emergency shelter that survivors can come to with their children. But yes, they provide, if you call that hotline. And they also have a text line, which also stood out to me when they gave me their business card, because sometimes people can't call on the phone because you're physically around that person. So being able to text the hotline, and they can also help you.
And overall, what is the message to someone who is struggling right now to know whether or not they can get out of this situation?
Yeah, I think the big thing is that knowing, just remembering that we want you to be safe. We want you to still be here, and you can get out of your situation. I think that really stood out to me when just speaking with the Hubbard House. Your life matters, you matter, your children matter, and just kind of reminding yourself of that constantly. Even in the world of news, we had a reporter at an Alabama station who was a sports reporter who died in a murder-suicide this week. And it kind of shook the entire news world because we cover these stories all the time. And so to see someone who works the same job that we work every day now be in this situation, and she now has a 3-year-old son that's here without mom and dad. So it's really hard. So just knowing that, we care about you and that we want you to be here and we want you to maybe get that help if you can get it.
Christina Burgess, John Daigle, Jack Webb, and Sylvia Perry, thank you so much for all being here today. Up next, the Jaguars Cheer Squad records an original tribute track. We hear from the team that helped bring the song to life.
Join WJCT Public Media and Rick Steves for an exciting virtual wine tasting event, February 26th at 8 p.m. Whether you're a seasoned connoisseur or just beginning your wine journey, you don't want to miss this enchanting evening with our very own world traveler, Rick Steves. He'll share his passion for travel and wine, guiding you through a hand-picked selection of exceptional wines from the most celebrated vineyards. Reserve your spot now. Information at wjct.org/events.
On the next Fresh Air, novelist John le Carré's son, Nick Harkaway, tells us about bringing back his late father's spy master, George Smiley, and Harkaway's latest novel, Carla's Choice. It takes place between le Carré's Cold War spy novels, the spy who came in from the cold, and Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. Join us.
Today at 1 on WJCT News 89.9.
On the next Florida Roundup, Bearing Witness, we'll introduce you to a man who has witnessed hundreds of detention hearings in a Florida federal immigration court. He watches how the court system is processing people showing up for their court hearings hoping to stay in the U.S. Dozens of them are arrested. What do you think of how immigration enforcement is playing out here in Florida? Email us radio@thefloridaroundup.org. I'm Tom Hudson. Then be sure to join us Friday noon until 1.
President Trump doubles down on an economic message that's disconnected from many Americans' experiences. On the next Friday News Roundup, how promises about health care and housing costs stack up to reality and what both parties say they're doing about it. And our expert panel reflects on the year in news. That's next time on 1A.
Today starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Welcome back. The Jacksonville Jaguars have been on a roll lately with the 5-game winning streak, so it's only fitting to have an original track to celebrate the team's recent success. Here to tell us about the new song is Danny Lobo, the owner and producer of Vibe Music Productions, a music studio here in Jacksonville. Good morning.
Good morning.
And we're also joined by Lauren Prater, captain of the Jags Roar, and thank you for being here this morning.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. Former captain, but a current member of the team, yes.
Well, once a captain, always.
Yes.
Danny, you helped record this original track with the Roar. Tell us a little bit about what inspired this.
Well, Lauren came to me with the vision of like a Jaguar, and she was looking for a place to record and create the song. And she's been a client of mine for, I think, three years now. The girls have been coming to the studio, kind of doing like a girls' night. And this past year, we've been doing it for a few years, but this past time, she was like, hey, man, I really want to get together and create another song, but this time I want to do it for the Jags and for the city of Jacksonville and for the people.
Yep.
And now we have like a Jaguar, and here we are. It's been a wild ride. It's happened fast, but thanks to Lauren, we have a hit.
Well, let's listen to a little bit of that song so you can get a taste of it.
Game day, sun flies, Jacksonville is so alive. Duval, bring the heat, come on bands, jump out your seat. 'Cause today is the day our boys came to play.
That's pretty catchy, Lauren. So
Thank
tell me
you.
a little bit about what inspired it and why now. Is it just a coincidence that you recorded this song and they've had a great season, or was your song the good luck charm they needed?
Some call it a coincidence. I call it God, but I will say, listen, it's my 6th year. This is my last season with the Roar, and I really wanted to go out with a bang. We have the privilege of being able to choreograph routines, so I thought it would be a really cool idea to support the guys and really create like an anthem to get the city revved up for this new season. We had a new coach. There was a lot of new energy, and it just seemed so fitting. So called Danny. Danny gave us the beat. The girls were enthusiastic, and here we are. And it was so awesome to get to perform it on the field.
And tell them, is there like a social media strategy to this? Are there going to be TikTok dances to this song? What are you thinking?
Yes, we have some TikTok dances, so check us out. We have the team official on Instagram. You could check out my Instagram as well. It's linked to my TikTok @_Lauren the Lawyer _ and you'll see some of the catchy dances that we do, the catchy TikToks. It's really cool.
What has the energy been like with the Jags this year and the fans?
Oh my gosh. Well, it's been up and down, I'll say, but the way, the roller coaster that we're on and the way we're just trending towards the playoffs, I feel like it is going to be a phenomenal year. I'm so excited for what the song is going to be able to do. You know, our hope with it was to be able to engage the community, entertain the community, and to empower the community to support the Jaguars as much as possible. So I'm so glad to be able to have an anthem that enables us to do that.
And for both of you, what has the response been like to the song?
It's been pretty awesome. getting a lot of text messages and emails from a lot of friends and families and fans that follow what we do at Vibe Music Productions, and it's been pretty incredible. It's been a dream come true, to be honest.
How about for you?
It's been incredible, and it's been a really good opportunity to show women that you can balance your careers and your passions as well, because this was something that started off as, just something fun, but then the group of girls that are involved, I'm a lawyer. I own my own law firm, the Modern Law Group. Another girl is a business owner. She works at Fortune 500. Another girl's in the Navy. So, we're mothers. To be able to put this group of girls together to create such a powerful piece with such an incredible production studio in the city, for the city, mind-blowing. It's been an incredible journey.
Well, congratulations. The song is called Like a Jaguar. And we'll be cheering our Jags on this Sunday as they take on the Denver Broncos with hopes to make it to the playoffs this year. That's our program. Thank you for listening. If you missed anything, you can find all of our past and current shows at firstcoastconnect.org. And while you're there, you can sign up to get our daily show news, including a breakdown of upcoming guests and topics delivered to your inbox every weekday. And don't forget to listen Saturday at 4 when neurologist Dr. Joe Shervin explores the patient encounter that shaped the career of a transplant nurse and inspired her advocacy work. First Coast Connect is produced by Stacey Bennett, and our associate producer is Isabella Casapano. Our show is directed by Brady Curran, and our theme music is performed by Club de la Belugas. First Coast Connect is taking a holiday break next week, but Ann Schindler and the program will be back on Monday, December 29th. I'm Ethel Butt, and you've been listening to First Coast Connect on WJCT News 89.9.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided by Baptist Health and the North Florida TPO.
The North Florida TPO is committed to shaping our transportation future. We're focused on planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, connected community. Learn more at northfloridatpo.com. Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com. Terrell Hogan Law.
I'm Wayne Hogan. Accidents can happen when you least expect it. For decades, our attorneys have dug out the facts to help juries decide who's at fault.
More at terrellhoganlaw.com.
This is WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville. Up next, national and local news from NPR and the WJCT News team.